Hi guys, welcome to today's episode of Zoo School Live here at Elmwood Park Zoo. So for the spirit of Halloween, what we're going to do today is we're going to go over some myths, folklore, and legends involving owls. But before I get into that, I think it'd be important that I introduce you to our friends first. So our first friend here today, her name is Barbie. She's a great horned owl, and she has been living with us at the Elmwood Park Zoo since 2015. Now, she did come to us as an adult, so we're not entirely sure what her exact age is, but we know that she's at least over 6 years of age because that's how long she's been with us. Now, Barbie came to us from a rehab facility in Wyoming. The reason that she came to us is because when she was out in Wyoming, she was found stuck to a barbed wire fence and unfortunately got a pretty bad wing injury. She was eventually re-released into the wild. However, after that re-release, she unfortunately got herself in the same sticky situation again, where she got caught on a wire fence again, hence why her name is Barbie. So the reason she was not re-released into the wild was because the damage to her wings were so severe that unfortunately she could not survive on her own. Now, Barbie was originally in the zoo as an education ambassador, but she most recently joined us, I believe, just a few months ago in the exhibit birds. Now, the reason that she joined us was because she was having a little bit of a hard time adjusting to ambassador life. As you can see, she likes to be very up high and a little bit alone, so she did not really work out too well in the education department, and she seems much happier out on exhibit with her new friend. So that brings us to our second owl today. His name is Echo, and he is a barred owl. Now, Echo has been with us since 2009, and at least from what we know, he's at least 23 years of age, which is very old for his species. Typically, 20 years would be about more accurate for them, but Echo here is still kicking and flying, just like he would naturally be in the wild. Now, Echo here is a little bit different from Barbie in a couple aspects that I will get to, but I guess I'll start with him when it comes to feeding. So as you look around the exhibit, you're going to find a few different locations where you're going to find rodents. Now, these are going to be what he's going to eat naturally in the wild, but we do have to supply it for him here. Now, what we do is instead of just putting his food out in an open dish where he can find it, we are going to hide it throughout his exhibit in different locations so that way he recreates the natural behavior of having to search and hunt for his food. Now, the hunting aspect is not nearly as intricate as it would be in the wild because the prey that we are giving him is already dead. So, unfortunately, he doesn't have to work too hard for it. He can kind of just find out where they're hiding and scoop them up. Now, Echo here is not that great at finding food and enrichment, so in his exhibit, you're going to see that his mice are more evenly spaced out and very much easy to see. They're not too tricky to get to. Now, that brings me back to Barbie. So, Barbie is much better at finding her food. She's really good at enrichment. So, as you come into Barbie's enclosure, you're going to see a couple rodents hiding inside of balls. Now, the reason for that is she is much better at finding her food and pulling it out of these hidden locations. So as you can see, her food is very much more tucked away than Echo's would be. Now, that's not to say one bird is better than the other. However, Barbie definitely likes to play with her enrichment a little bit more than Echo would. Now, before I get into the myths and legends, I'm just going to tell you a couple fun facts about these owls, as well as some adaptations that they would have. So one thing that owls have is silent flight. Now, the reason that they have that is because they mostly hunt at nighttime. So these silent flights are going to help them much easier to get prey than if they were to be flapping their wings, making a whole lot of noise. It would be a lot harder for them to catch their prey in the wild. So the reason that their flight is silent is because if you were to see a owl feather up close, you're going to see they have fringed flight feathers. Now, that is going to muffle the sound of air as it passes through their wings. So we do have a couple feathers here that you can look up close. It might be a little bit harder to see on camera, but you are going to see that these tips are fringed a little bit more than if you were to see any other type of bird. For example, parrot feather wings are not fringed, so they make a whole lot of noise when flying around. But our owls have fringed feathers, which is going to keep them totally silent at night. Now, another fun adaptation about owls is their necks. So owls have 14 bones in their necks, which is 2 times more than what people have. Now, this gives them the ability to turn their head 270 degrees in both directions. The reason that works out really well for them is that the less their body moves, the less likely they are to be spotted while trying to look for prey, as well as avoid predators of their own. So, if you've ever seen an owl turn their head all the way around, they cannot turn it the full 360 degrees, but they absolutely can turn it a full 270 in either direction, left or right. Now, another thing about owls that you're going to notice that each owl has a different feather pattern. Now, this is going to be used for camouflage. So each owl, depending on their native area, is going to have different colorations. So, for example, you're going to see that Barbie and Echo have a whole lot of browns, grays, and then a little bit of white typically around their feathers as well. This is going to help them blend really well into their native surrounding, which is mostly North America. So they're going to be found in trees and bushes and shrubbery like that. So they're going to do a really good job about hiding with those surroundings because they are very much colored the same as their surroundings are. Now, another fun thing about owls is their eyes are huge. Now, in comparison to a human body, if we were to have eyes just as large as an owl does, a human eye would have to be the size of a grapefruit. So the reason that their eyes are so impressive is because they're so large that they have way more light receptors than a human would, which is what makes it possible for them to be able to fly at night. Which brings me to another point, that owls are mostly nocturnal. So they're going to do most of their flying, hunting at nighttime during dawn and dusk, but also between those hours as well. But those really big eyes with those lots of light receptors give them the ability to take in a lot more light at night, which makes it much easier for them to see. Now, another thing about owls is their toes. This was a fun one for me to look up. So owls have 4 toes. 2 are always going to be sticking forward. 1 is always going to be sticking back, but that 4th one has the ability to rotate either frontwards or backwards, and they're going to do that depending on the task that they are doing at the time. For example, if they are perching, you're going to see that they have 2 toes in the front, 2 toes in the back. But if they're catching prey, typically they're going to have those toes spread out very far and wide, so that way they have the ability to snatch up their prey before it can get away. So owl talons are actually going to be used to help catch their prey as well. So what owls do is they're going to swoop down silently in the middle of the night, scoop up some different prey. That can be small rodents, mice, like we feed ours, rats and mice here. But they're much better at catching these small items due to their silent flight, but also those talons on their feet are going to help them scoop them up. So what they're going to do is they're going to hold that prey in place once they're in a comfortable location, and they're either going to swallow their prey whole, or they're going to rip it and eat some larger pieces first. So if we head back towards Barbie, I have this container of what's called pellets. So what owls do after consuming food is their stomachs actually cannot digest bones, fur, or feathers. So what they're going to do is they're going to eventually spit up what's called a pellet. So this owl pellet here, if I were to break it open, you would probably find little tiny bits of feather or fur or bones inside. Now that's going to be from the prey that they ate, but it's the parts of the body that they do not need to digest, nor can they digest it, so they spit it back up in these little pellets. So that's pretty fun. Now, a couple other things about owls is that they are typically solitary animals, so you're not really going to see them in large flocks of birds or anything like you would with other native birds in the area. However, if you were to see a group of owls, that would be called a parliament. And the reason for that is a lot of people look at owls as having a whole lot of wisdom. So the name parliament was chosen due to their wisdom type look to them. So birds also, or owls in general, also have hollow bones. Now that's only going to be with the really large bones, and the reason for that is going to be because obviously to be able to fly you need to stay light. So those bones are going to be hollow or either have a lattice type mechanism in it where it's going to keep that bone much, much lighter to keep their flight nice and light as well. So before I waste any more time about going into facts and such, I'm going to tell you a couple fun myths and legends about owls. So the first one, I have this photo to go along with it. So right here we have a coin. It's back from Greek and Roman times. So right here on your left, you're going to see Athena. She is the goddess of wisdom. And on the right is the opposite side of her coin. It's a small little owl. Now the reason for that is because Athena originally had a crow as her favorite feathered friend, but then eventually, after she discovered that she was no longer a fan of the crow, she decided that an owl was her new favorite feathered creature. Now the reason for that, like I mentioned earlier, is because a lot of people back in the day viewed owls as very wise animals. So, with that being said, she decided that the owl was going to be on the other side of her coin and kind of be the symbolism for herself as well. Now, what she would do is she would actually send owls out with soldiers into battle, and the reason for that is that if they saw one flying above right before a battle began, it meant that victory was near in sight. So that would kind of give the soldiers or battlemen inspiration to kind of get through what they needed to do. But I thought that was pretty interesting to have that kind of inspiration at the beginning of a battle. Must have been very intense. Now, another thing about the Greeks and the Romans is that they believed that witches could actually transform into owls. Aside from that, they did also believe that they could be messengers for witches. And then, as well as that, Romans believed that an owl was the omen of imminent death, and they were even heard before the death of Julius Caesar and Augustus, who were both Roman emperors. Aside from that, if you guys have absolutely any questions, just kidding, so sorry. So another thing was in ancient Egypt, they were known as keen-sighted hunters, but they were also associated with mourning or death. Now we do have a picture from Egyptian times that you can see that they did actually put an owl on some of their pyramid drawings. So even back then, owls were viewed to be very wise and very much a large part of their world. Aside from that, if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. We're kind of just hanging out here with Barbie and Echo in the meantime.
Doesn't look like we have any questions yet, but if you guys have anything you'd like to ask about Echo or Barbie, just like every other Zoo School Live episode, please pop those in the comments right now, and we'll do our best to answer them. Or if you think of something later on, we'll jump on Facebook and answer them as well. Just one more cool picture to show you guys before we sign off with our owl friends. As Carol was saying, owls have been a part of human history for a long time, in fact, since the very beginning. So we actually have a photo here of one of the original cave paintings, probably the oldest known depiction of an owl from over 30,000 years ago from a cave in France. So, you know, as long as owls have existed and humans have been on this earth, people have been coming up with really interesting stories to describe what they do and why they're around, and that's just such a fun tie-in to our holiday our Halloween season right now. Ooh, we do have a question from Kimberly. She would like to know, do they have teeth? So, Kara, would you like to answer that one?
Yes. So owls do not have teeth. However, that would be terrifying if they did. No, instead, they have beaks. Now, as you can see, if you look really closely at Echo right now, in the dead center of his face, you're going to see a really long, pointy beak. Now, what he is going to use that for is being able to shred up his prey. So aside from his talons on his feet, which are going to hold the prey still, he does have the ability to also pull them apart a bit. So his beak is actually going to be used for that. There are no teeth inside, but there is a little tongue.
Caleb would like to know if you can pet the owls.
So that's a good question. I have personally never pet one of our owls here, but I'm sure if you were to have an owl in an education ambassador program that was handled a lot by their keepers, I'm sure they would have the ability to, depending on how strong their relationship is. However, I will tell you that typically speaking, owls really are not like household pets. They don't really like snuggles. They don't really like to be pet. It's not natural for them. So if you were to find one that was able to be pet, that person did a lot of work with it. However, you're not usually going to find that.
All right. Adric wants to know, how fast can they fly?
So typically speaking, depending on the owl, they can fly up to about 30 miles per hour, which is pretty fast for a bird like that.
But these guys are going to be more of a sit and wait kind of hunter. So owls can move quickly if they need to, but most of the time they're going to be nice and slow and try to ambush their food. So they're not going to fly super fast like a falcon or a hawk even. Great question, guys. Anderson would like to know, how long is their beak? 2 to 3 inches.
So I haven't personally measured it myself because I've never gotten that close. However, if I were to guess just by looking at it, I'd say Echo's is probably about 2 inches. Barbie's might be just a little bit longer at closer to 3. But I personally have never measured them myself though.
All right, so that looks like that's about all our questions for now. So we'll get one last look at our friends Barbie and Echo. All right, there she is. All right.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much for joining us again, and we can't wait to see you again. Thanks for coming by.